So you no longer want to go to the US portion of the 2026 World Cup for whatever reason. Okay, that's cool. Let me show you how you would travel the Mexico and Canada portions of this tournament. Dímelo, mi gente, travel football fan here, helping fans save money and travel the 2026 World Cup. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel, like the video because, algorithms. Click on the bell button so you're notified when the next videos do come out. Remember, I am hosting weekday lives on YouTube, okay? Weekday afternoons, all right? Talking about various topics of the World Cup that I don't cover in short form videos or in these long form videos. So make sure you tune in. It's going to help out with the algorithm, it's going to help out with my monetization goals. And again, please make sure you follow me across all socials. Let's go. Unless you've been living under a rock, you can pretty much tell why people don't want to come to the United States or are really hesitant of coming to the United States for the 2026 World Cup. You have the White House telling people to leave before they haven't even stepped foot into this country. You have a lot of social upheaval and unrest within American society that might not be as welcoming to these fans as one would suspect, considering that they are bringing in billions of dollars in tourism revenue. Point is, there's a lot of reasons, okay? But let's not dwell into that, okay? Let's see how you could travel the Mexico and Canada portions of this World Cup, whether you want to see the most games or you want to see specific games in specific cities. Let's look over the calendar that we have now, so that way you start getting ideas as to how to navigate between these 5 cities and these 2 countries. All right. So let's get a couple of things out the way. For one, if you are looking to go to either of these 2 countries to see the most games possible, you're only going to be able to go to 11 out of the 13 games that are in each of these countries. Because remember, there's 26 games happening in Canada and Mexico, split in half, and then the rest of the games are happening in the United States. Now, the reason why you can only go to 11 of the 13 games in each of these countries is because if you look at the calendar, okay, right off the bat, June 11, 2026, you have 2 games happening in Mexico. You have one happening in Guadalajara and then one happening in Mexico City. We assume, of course, or actually we know, shouldn't I say assume, that the Mexico City game will be the inaugural match. So that means the Guadalajara game will happen after the inaugural match that Mexico is playing against whoever they're assigned to in that group. So right off the bat, you can't go to all 13 games because you are in effect having to choose either between Ciudad de Mexico or Guadalajara. Now, chances are you're not going to get tickets for the Mexico City one. Okay, this is going to be some of the most in demand, probably in world history. I don't think that's a hyperbole to say the least. So let's just assume that you're going to be in Guadalajara for the start of your travels within Mexico, right? Then, if you go down the calendar, right, on June 24th, you see that there will be a game in Ciudad de Mexico, which happens to be the third group stage game for Mexico, a very vital one. If Mexico can clinch the group, they get to play one more game, that round of 32 match in Mexico City. But then you also have another game in Monterrey. So you're going to have to choose. Again, are you going to be able to get tickets to that third game for Mexico at Estadio Azteca? Again, chances are probably not, because that is going to be very well sought after. So you might be going to Monterrey instead. That means that leaves you all of these other games on the board for you to decide whether you're going to be able to make it. So realistically, can you? It could potentially work, because you would go from Guadalajara on June 11th, right? Either stay there the next day or make your way down to or up to Monterrey, I should say, on June 14th, right? So that's one, that's two, okay? Then you're going to go to Mexico City on June 17th. That's your third game. And then the next day, and again, this is going to be dependent on the kickoff times, right? Kickoff times and which flight you're going to be able to get from Ciudad de Mexico to Guadalajara. So then you would go to Guadalajara's that game number 4, although that is also Mexico's second game in that group stage. Are you going to be able to get tickets for that game? Again, probably not. That's going to be very well sought after. So maybe you can only go to 10 out of 13 games, okay? From a travel perspective, you could get to Guadalajara. Maybe you go to their fan festival. That could be an idea, okay? Then there is a day in between. You can go to Monterrey on June 20th. That would be game 5. And then you have a couple of days rest. You go back to Guadalajara on June 23rd. That's game number 6. Again, you have to decide between Mexico City or back to Monterrey. That will be game number 7 for you. You come back to Guadalajara. That's game number 8. And then now you're in onto the knockouts. Monterrey, then Ciudad de Mexico, and then you basically stay in Ciudad de Mexico for almost a week. And that is your 11 out of 13 games for Mexico. If you're only going to travel the Canada portion of this tournament, you're going to be racking up so many airline miles, or at least you should be collecting those airline miles, because you're going to be going back and forth between Toronto and Vancouver. So if we take a look at the calendar, again, Toronto's home opener, June 12th. Are you going to be able to get tickets to that? Probably not, but maybe it might be good to be there in Toronto for the vibes. I mean, it is, after all, going to be a very historic tournament for Canada there. Then the next day, you play Vancouver. Is it realistic that you can make it to that game? Yes, depending on the kickoff times, of course, and the fact that from Toronto to Vancouver, you gain time, right? You go backwards in time. So if the game in Vancouver is a little bit later in the day or towards the evening, you could definitely make that first flight from Toronto in the morning of the next day and get to Vancouver on time. Then there's a 3-day window which you can fly back to Toronto and then do that again, right? Go back to Vancouver. So that's already 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then you'll fly from Vancouver back to Toronto and again do the same thing again, right? So that's 5 and 6. Again, same thing moving on from June 23rd to June 24th now. That's 7 and 8. Where that stops is on June 26th. You have to decide whether you're going to stay in Vancouver, because at that point, game number 8 would be in Vancouver for you. Either stay in Vancouver or you fly back to Toronto. Okay? And then again, you have that same choice to make on July 2nd. So you go from June 26th to July 2nd. It's a long time. So, I mean, there could be several trip ideas there. Maybe you take the train from Vancouver to Toronto, do a more of a scenic trip, go to some of the other parts of Canada that you want to explore. But basically, game number 9, game number 10, you have to decide whether you're going to stay on the East Coast, right, on the eastern side of Canada, or on the western side of Canada. And then finally, July 7th is game number 11. That will be in Vancouver. That's how you can end the tournament there. But again, as you can see, a lot of going back and forth, a lot of back and forth. You're going to have to decide whether that is a feasible trip for you to do in order to explore Canada, or you're going to add some different elements in there, especially later on towards the knockout rounds, whether you want to add Quebec, you want to go ahead and add Alberta, Saskatchewan, any of these other places in Canada that you can visit in between these matches. All right, so let's say instead you want to travel between the two countries, right? That is also possible, although keep in mind you're not going to be able to do 22 of the 26 games in these countries. I actually, as I was recording this, I put out a video here on TikTok and Instagram asking folks, hey, what's the average number of games that you have attended for a previous World Cup, men's or women's? And the answer seems to be have settled around 3 to 6. Some people have gone more, some people have done less. So let's just assume you do 5 games for this World Cup. Well, you could just go to each of one of these World Cup host cities and these two countries, and there's your 5, right? A very simple way to do this would be to actually start in Guadalajara, right? Because if you look at the match schedule, right, Guadalajara has 4 World Cup matches, but they're all in the group stage, okay? And so yeah, if whatever trip you're gonna do to try to incorporate all of these 5 cities from Canada and Mexico, you have to do the ones in Guadalajara during the group stage, at least one of these, okay? And then you could do a simple loop around, right? The only connection that does not exist, at least currently, as of May 2025, connection being a flight connection, is between Monterrey and Vancouver. That is subject to change. By the time you're watching this, there might be a flight connection already between Monterrey or Vancouver, or there might not be. Okay, Monterrey does connect to the other three host cities, while everyone else does connect to one another. So you can easily go from Toronto, Guadalajara, Ciudad de Mexico, Vancouver. Well, no, actually, I messed that one up already. How about you just do Toronto, Vancouver, Guadalajara, Ciudad de Mexico, Monterrey? Boom, you're done. You did your 5 cities, you're good to go. And if you look at the knockout round, excuse me, right there, yeah, knockout round, okay, you see that it is possible to do a Monterrey, Ciudad de Mexico, Toronto, and Vancouver. So you get to knock out 4 of the 5 host cities. And again, Guadalajara you would do in the group stage. So there is that possibility for that combination. Okay, you could just do a loop around, fly over the United States, and then you'd be set to go. Of course, for those of you that are going to be traveling from the United States to either of these 2 countries, the whole point of doing that loop around and basically using the United States as flyover territory is to avoid the multiple crossings situation. Okay, we do not know how these agents at the airports and at the road entrances at these ports of entry, how they're going to act towards fans crossing the border multiple times during this tournament. They might confuse you for someone that's trying to illegally enter the country, etc. To avoid those issues, that's why I don't have as a piece of advice for you to go into the United States, back out, come back to the US, back out like that. No, if you want to travel to these 2 other countries, do it all in one shot, right? Literally go to Canada and then to Mexico, or go to Mexico to Canada. Do it that way, okay? So in that way, you only have to come back into the United States one time, and then you just explain to the agent, yo, man, it's the World Cup. Let me through. Like, seriously, it's really annoying. In any case, those are the ways that you can travel this World Cup. You have the schedule right here. If this video just blows up in terms of views and content hours and everything, I will publish this on my website, travelfootballfan.com. So now you have a good reference point to it. Of course, these other schedules do exist as well all throughout the internet, but this one's specific to these 2 countries. Again, if your plan is to travel only to Mexico, only to Canada, or to only both of those countries for 2026 next summer. All right, mi gente, thank you for watching this video. Again, I ask you to subscribe, like the video, click on the bell button. Almost 70% of you watch my videos and have not subscribed. So please, that will help with my monetization goals, which, by the way, by the time you've watched this video, we probably have already cracked the 3,000 watch hours goal, which is fantastic. We need another 1,000 to get the ads rolling and just get in that sweet money, because look, TikTok's going to go into the wilderness. They ain't going to renew that deal. That algorithm's pretty much already knocking me out of monetization. So this platform is the thing that's going to help me out here. Remember, I also host my weekday afternoon YouTube live streams talking about various World Cup topics. I covered my reviews of the FIFA collect packs. Weekday afternoons. I don't have a set time, but go ahead and check me out there as well. And again, make sure you follow me across all other socials. You can sign up for my newsletter on my website, travelfootballfan.com. Remember also that I offer both travel consultations if you're looking to plan your own travel, or if you find travel planning really, really, really stressful, allow the folks at Absolute Sport to plan your World Cup travel. They'll cover your hotel, your game day transit, and your ticket to a game. Again, go ahead and DM me or email me for more information about those travel packages for next summer. So go ahead and check those out. Thank you, mi gente, so much for your viewing. Muchas gracias. Ahí nos vemos.